Hey everyone, this is JT from the Uninvited, and you're listening to my weekly mixtape with Brian Colburn. In fact, you're listening to the best episode he ever recorded because it's with me, and we talk about indie alternative rock from the 90s. So awesome stuff.
Welcome to My Weekly Mixtape, a podcast that takes the classic mixtape approach to building a modern playlist. I'm your host, Brian Colburn. Joining me for tonight's collaboration is JT, lead singer of The Uninvited. JT, thank you so much for joining me tonight on My Weekly Mixtape.
Brian, it's great to be here with you. I've been really looking forward to this.
Likewise. And what I'm going to do is start by asking you the same question I ask each and every guest on this show. JT, what does the word mixtape mean to you?
Oh, mixtape has so many good emotional connotations to me. I'm mixtape generation, right? I made mixtapes on cassette for years and years and years. And so mixtape to me is love. I mean, I would make mixtapes for friends, for potential girlfriends, and they're like little love letters, right? You make this cool mixtape, you say, hey, I made this mixtape for you. And then the person understands the vibe that's coming off of that, from that music. And yeah, it's a little love letter. It's a thank you. It's, it's a matter of friendship, saying, I get your vibe. I know what you dig. And here's some of it. Here's what I think is super cool that I think you're going to think is super cool too. I loved making mixtapes and just, yeah, love it.
And what's great about that is you could take other musicians' stories and create your own story by mixing them together. And where
Exactly.
In playlists now, people drag and drop and hit shuffle, you lose that privatization of the music. And that's what this show is about.
Right.
Getting us back to that moment again.
That's a great point about hitting shuffle. A good playlist is supposed to be heard in the order you do it in. And I coming up with today's playlist, I'd even thought of it that way. It's like, all right, this is the order it's got to go.
All right. Well, tonight, JT and I are going to be co-curating a mixtape of 90s indie alternative, or as I like to call it, songs that I feel fall under the category of underrated 90s rock music. Because a lot of the songs that I have on my list, in the 90s, I lived in North Carolina for a few years, and there was a station called 106.5 The End, and they always said indie alternative, and they played a lot of bands that everybody knows: Matchbox 20, Counting Crows, Garbage, the big arena headlining bands. But they didn't just play that. Anytime they played an insanely massive band, it was followed up with a band that you might not know. And a lot of these bands we're going to probably be talking about tonight. And that is what I looked for in my songs that I chose for tonight. JT, what were you looking for in the songs that you brought to the table this evening?
It's a great, you kind of stole it right from me there. That same kind of vibe of, when in the 90s, when we talked about alternative rock, there was sort of this upper echelon that meant alternative. Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, pretty much anything from Seattle, that was what defined alternative. And, but before those bands became mainstream, shall we call it alternative, they were underground indie alternative bands. Nirvana was on Sub Pop for years before,
Yes.
They broke through, and nobody had heard of them. And those who did were like, this is like, my satanic underground music. And so for me, living most of the 90s in Los Angeles and being in the clubs and trying to get the band going, during that whole time, I had so much great exposure to indie alternative, to the alternative bands that were the alternative of the alternative, and got to listen to radio stations, not just like KROQ, who weren't, who were like the number one alternative station in the United States, but they also weren't afraid to play all sorts of underground stuff. They even had a couple of shows, Rodney on the Rock, where, Rodney Bingenheimer, the scene king from the 70s and 80s of Los Angeles, would play all this underground stuff that no one had heard of. And then you had KXLU, which was the college station, playing just like the most cutting edge alternative rock And so, yeah, so I was thinking in terms of like, okay, indie, what is the alternative of the alternative without getting too far off into like obscure college rock weirdness. Nothing wrong with that. But like, oh, here's 20 bands you've never heard of in your life and never will. And their music kind of sucks, so it was, so that.
Well, I will say this, there are one or two bands I might dip into that might fall under that.
Oh, there's
You've never heard of them. However, there's going to be some bands that I mentioned tonight that I know a lot of people listening are going to immediately be like, no, they're popular. Don't you dare say that they're indie or alternative. And yes, they're very popular bands, but I'm talking about the mainstream popularity, where some of the bands I'm going to talk about tonight are musicians love these bands. They have massive followings. They play big venues, but mainstream radio and MTV pretty much ignored them. So they still are outliers on the indie alternative scene, if you would call it that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great call. And a lot of the ones on my list are sort of part of my personal musical journey. They're bands that I heard and considered to be either influential or peers at the time, and I would like listen to them like, oh, wow, crank that up. And I have, and this is going to be a common theme throughout this whole thing, I have this real affinity to guitar pop music. I love a great song. I love a big hook. I love a melody you can sing. And you take a look at bands like Sonic Youth and some of these others that were really experimenting with noise pop at the time. And I had great, respect for what they were trying to do. But what resonated with me personally, during that time period were these great songs, and especially, if you heard them on the radio or somebody put them on a mixtape or something like that, and you're just like, oh, wow, they did kind of, this band got out there and got a little bit popular. It gave us hope. It gave us hope that, maybe we could get popular too. So yes. Yeah, that definitely inspired my choices.
So let's get down to business. Tonight, as I mentioned earlier, JT and I will be curating the ultimate 90s indie alternative mixtape, and we'll use the old cassette deck approach, meaning our mixtape is going to be broken up into two sides, side A and side B. JT, as the special guest, will begin side A with his first song choice, and then I'll add a song that I feel best follows up his choice. We'll then flip-flop choosing songs until we've mapped out 10 songs for side A. We'll then give our mixtape a proverbial flip, and we'll map out side B, only this time I'll kick things off with JT choosing second. Our overall goal for the episode is to craft the best 90s indie alternative mixtape possible through only 20 songs. At the end of the show, you could take our conversation to the next level by visiting the 90s Indie Alternative page at myweeklymixtape.com to give our final mixtape a listen via the embedded playlist. Finally, if you like what you're hearing on the show, please consider becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. And speaking of Patreon mixtapers, a few of them have chimed in with some of the songs they would kick off their 90s indie alternative mixtape with. Starting with Ben from the Too Vague podcast, who chimed in with Local H's Cool Magnet, Cactus Pete, who chimed in with G Love's Baby Got Sauce and Course of Nature's Caught in the Sun, and David Owens, who chimed in with Spot's Moon June Spoon. I also had some people reach out to me at My Weekly Mixtape on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and I want to shout those out as well. Kicking things off with 2 from Sunny Day Real Estate. Trevor Dale chimed in with 7, and the Music Rewind podcast chimed in with In Circles. Frank Lewis chimed in with Morphine's Buena. Paris St. Germain chimed in with the Dismemberment Plan's Rusty. Philip Bergman chimed in with Voice of the Beehive's Scary Kisses. Chris Uminski chimed in with Sonic Youth's Teenage Riot. Derek Caraview chimed in with the Afghan Whigs' John the Baptist. Sean Faust chimed in with Diggs' Believe. Raul Dukes Burner chimed in with Jay Unger and Molly Mason's The Contra Dance. Chael chimed in with Jellyfish, joining a fan club. Mally Hart chimed in with the Folk Implosion's Slap Me. Rob Ebert chimed in with Harvey Danger's Carlotta Valdez. We have 2 for Ned's Atomic Dustbin, with Frankie Pants chiming in with Kill Your Television and Jim Santora chiming in with Throwing Things. Jim Bricker chimed in with the Gin Blossoms, Found Out About You. Cinema Poison chimed in with Sloan's Money City Maniacs. Dave Schneier chimed in with Something Happens, Devil and Miss Jones. Seth Baffilia chimed in with Hum's Stars. L.I. Sports Fan chimed in with Fugazi's Waiting Room. Hutch chimed in with Cakes the Distance. Jason Whistle of the It's Not That Bad and There Can Only Be One podcasts chimed in with the Nixon's Foma. Pedestrian at Best chimed in with Adorable Sunshine Smile. Seeker 11 chimed in with Screaming Trees Transfiguration. The We Needed Roads podcast chimed in with Screaming Trees Nearly Lost You. The Media Path podcast chimed in with Yola Tango's Tom Courtenay. Conda 96 chimed in with Dada's Dorina. Semi-Skeptic podcast chimed in with Travis's Something. Cheryl Simone Miller chimed in with Concrete Blonde's God is a Bullet, which she did note was from 1989, but I'll allow it. Daniel Dissinger chimed in with Candlebox's Far Behind. And Matthew Kennedy at the X Radio X podcast chimed in with Modest Mouse's Trailer Trash. Okay, JT, with that laundry list of songs out in the open, I am ridiculously curious to see how you're going to kick this one off. So with that, I'm officially pressing the record button on this mixtape and throwing it over to you. What song are you starting tonight's 90s indie alternative mixtape with, and why?
All right. Well, I decided to go chronologically. So we're going to start with 1990. And the one I'm going to kick it off with is There She Goes by The Laws. Now, there's a reason for this. To me, that song was kind of this 1990s turning point of everything that had happened previously in the 80s overseas, right? You had these bands like the Stone Roses and the Soup Dragons and, all these kind of guys that were doing a kind of like a guitar pop thing. And it really defining a sound. And to me, There She Goes by The Laws was like this perfect culmination of all of that. It was like this lofty, perfect pop song. Like the Beatles could have done that song. And it was this beautiful connection for me between the turning point that was occurring in the 1990s and the entire musical history of guitar pop before it.
Absolutely love it. And you know that song had meaning because of the fact that 7 years later, Sixpence None the Richer takes the song and turns it into bubblegum pop that the entire country is salivating over. And if you think about it, the people that knew the Laws original must have been like, where was this love 7 years ago?
Right.
Because we already know this song is great.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes to show the importance of a great song, right? It wasn't just their performance, which is so much more stellar, if you ask me, and raw. It had a rawness to it as well. But it goes to show that a great song is a great song, that you can interpret it in many different ways.
Well, I hope I'm following up that great song with one that you consider as a great song as well. And I'm going to stay in the early 90s like you are.
Okay.
And I'm going to play off one that I feel just was a band that was criminally underrated. I'm probably going to use that word a lot tonight. And this is a song, when I first heard it, I went looking for it everywhere, trying to find it, looking at it, because at this point in 1992, you couldn't Google the song. It was word of mouth. So I'm walking all over the local record store saying, I heard a song. It's all about Disneyland. I need to know who does this song. And they're like, Disneyland? I'm like, yeah, like the one that's out in California, only it's spelt weird. It's Dizzknee Land. And the band is Dada. The album is Puzzle. This song to me was everything about 90s indie alternative. This song, the fact that it wasn't a massive #1 hit single shocks me. But especially in the New Jersey, New York tri-state area, this song did take on a pretty big moment in 92. But as fast as that moment was, it was gone. And unfortunately, so was the band. But I still, to this day, have seen cover bands pulling that song out. So there's definitely an element of timelessness to the song. And realistically, now with time, you realize they called it Disney, like with two Z's and a K-N-E, so they didn't get their asses sued off.
Exactly.
But what a great song. So
great song.
Dada Disneyland. Throwing it to you, JT.
Nice one. Nice one. In fact, so now I have to scratch one off my list because I was going to go with Dada's Dim from the same record.
Nice.
Yeah. Because that's, it's sort of like Disneyland to me showed this really cool sardonic side to them. And then Dim was this really heavy, serious, breakup kind of song that was really amazing. Also, I'm just going to say shout out to Seven Horse, which is a band that is comprised of the ex-members of Dada who are active on the scene still. They're playing gigs all around, and you can find them on TikTok at Seven Horse Band, I believe it is. And it's the number 7 horse. And so they're still doing it. Go Geriatric Rockers.
Heck
all right.
yeah.
So if I'm scratching that one off the list, I'm sticking in 1990, and I'm going to go with a song, again, flew completely under the radar with a band that went mostly under the radar for a good reason. They just got squashed, unfortunately. The song Golden Blunders by the Posies. Golden Blunders and the Posies in general were, to me, that one of the best, but the last of the kind of Paisley Underground pop rock movement. And it's a beautiful song. It's got great lyrics, that come from this it's a cool little story. And again, very, very poppy and stuff. But, it's 1990 in Seattle. And these guys, this is one of their last records that they released and one of the last singles. And like next year, Nirvana drops with Smells Like Teen Spirit. And it's just freaking over, right? If your amp isn't cranked to 10 and you're not flying the flannel, you're done. And these guys, to me, they just got smushed when that happened. And it was criminal because they were a great band, and Golden Blunders especially, such a great song.
This was a group that was carrying the torch for the Elvis Costellos in the 80s, I feel like, continuing that sound. But for some reason, the musical landscape just wasn't having it, because you got to realize they're competing at that point against the hair band scene, which was still your big rock moment. You still had Poison and Warrant and these bands selling out arenas, and you had labels that were looking for the next Poison and Warrant still. They weren't looking for the next Elvis Costello.
Right. Exactly. And then they managed to get their signed and get their records out, but then it was a double whammy for them because then grunge hit big, and grunge just swept away everything.
Yes.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And with that, I'm going to follow up the Posies with something that a couple of years later, I'm going to go to 1993 for this one. I'm a bass player by trade, and the first time I heard this bass line, I immediately said, I'm going to love this song for the rest of my life. And it didn't even get to the vocals. I just knew. And it was right up my alley. It was one of the first songs that I sat down and was like, let me learn how to play this. This is fun. And this band, everybody's going to know, and everybody's going to know the song. But to me, it falls under this category because I don't even want to say a one-hit wonder, but how this band wasn't massive is beyond me. And the album is Last Splash, and I'm going with the Breeders' Cannonball.
Nice. Yes.
I mean, big hit. Everybody knows it. It's in its 30th anniversary, which I don't even want to wrap my mind around this year. But this song was everywhere. I don't understand how the label didn't have the foresight to have a follow-up. Like, this band had what it took to break through the mold in 1993. And the fact that this is the only song that did to me is criminal.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say it that I there had to have been sexism involved. As much as we tried to push the needle in the 90s, it was still the 90s, and we weren't quite there yet. Not the way we are now, which still, we have work to do. But yeah, chick band. It's like, oh, okay, well, we had a nice little success with a chick band. On to the next dude rock band. I think that had to have been part of it.
And that's a shame if that is, because the Breeders, that entire album is amazing. But I wanted to go with the one in this playlist that made people go, yeah, why? Why weren't they bigger? That song was amazing.
Yeah. And, at the same time, you had like Juliana Hatfield, and you had Liz Phair, and, these others that were really, trying to push alternative rocks, but, indie alternative rock. And it would take until like the later 90s, until Tori Amos and others were coming along, that there was actually this kind of like huge commercial breakthrough.
The Lilith Fair time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sarah McLachlan. Exactly. Yeah. But it's a shame that they weren't bigger than they were. All right. I'm going to go one more from 1990 now. And then I promise to get out of 1990. And there's a couple of reasons. There's a sentimental reason for this, and also just the underrated aspect of it. So I'm going to go with the Rembrandts, Just the Way It Is, Baby. Everyone knows the Rembrandts from the theme to Friends, right? I'll Be There For You. And funny story, we crossed paths, I'll say, with the guys in the Rembrandts a couple of times. And we were hanging out at Club Lingerie once, and one of the guys was there, and we struck up a conversation, and they're like, yeah, everything's screwed, man. We got dropped from the label. The tour was a bummer. I don't know what we're going to do. And I'm like, how could you be dropped from the label? Just the Way It Is, Baby. It's like, it's again, another beautiful pop guitar song, and a great song. And, he was like, yeah, well, it's just the way it goes. And, we got a couple pokers in the fire. We're talking to another label, but, we don't know if that's going to work out. And we'll probably put together our own tour and just go to the cities where it worked out for us. And, I don't know, we recorded one of our songs for a NBC show or whatever, and maybe something will happen there. So that took off, and, that's a nice royalty check to this day. But for my band especially, hearing songs like The Way It Is, Baby, and Golden Blunders, and even, There She Goes, and that sort of thing, was just affirmation that for us, that there was an audience out there that loved guitar pop, because we sure loved it. Mm-hmm. and so it gave us hope that there could be success in that genre, despite the fact that monster bands that were following the trend were really what was popular at the time.
Well, I want to pivot this to the Uninvited for a second here, because obviously everybody knows the theme from Friends. Some of your music was featured on some TV shows like Party of Five, Beverly Hills 90210, MTV's Road Rules, The Real World. These are all shows people know. A lot of young indie bands are striving for just that kind of exposure. My question to you is, because you knew the Rembrandts and you know the whole Friends theme and everything else, having had your songs in different shows, how much exposure did that get the band? How much of that was Atlantic Records kind of trying to reap the benefits of it? How much of it went back to them? How much of it did it really, truly help you? And then with streaming, a lot of these shows are having second lives. Are you seeing any piece of that? Because the shows have your music. So
yeah, it's a great question. Honestly, the biggest impact is the money. The residuals. At the time you get a small fee for the licensing, and then the rest is the royalties that come from the publishing and writing side. We were very fortunate in that we had a friendship with a gentleman named John Rosner, who had a publishing company. He worked with his father on a publishing company, and his father had been in the publishing business for decades. He had like Neil Diamond's catalog and a lot of old school 70s publishing. And John was sort of a co-owner of the company with his father. And at that time, publishing companies were the ones that you called to get sync licensing. And, it's a whole different model and a whole different paradigm now. But at the time, that's who you called. So he had connections with a lot of different production companies, and he was able to get us these placements. And yes, the mechanicals were owned by Atlantic. So, they got that portion of the money. But we struck up a great deal with John, where he did not take the publishing of the song forever. We struck up a side deal where he had the publishing from that placement, and then we got the writer's share. And yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate too that those were, especially, 90210 was a huge hit TV show. So we never stopped seeing royalties from that. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And then and then it got big in South Korea and Taiwan. And, we're talking like $1.43, but we're not, after a while, but it's still there. It's still in every BMI check we get is, our residuals from those two shows, especially 90210 and Party of Five. So it's something that we're looking into again, since we have such an extensive catalog, but it's a much more competitive and difficult process these days. The deals are a lot different. I mean, there can be large money deals, but because of how competitive it is and how good the music is, and that, the fact that that anyone can really make a pretty good record these days, it's so competitive that, you can, and a lot of these publishers, these sync placement people, they have relationships with people who will go and make music for them. Hey, I need something moody. Oh, I can do that. And, and here it is. Or, I don't want to pay. And this is what happened in the last couple of films we were in was, I don't want to pay $100,000 to get this Green Day song. Do you have something that's like it? I'm like, yeah, this one. And we'll charge you $5,000. Deal. And to answer your original question, made no difference on our popularity or
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it was something we could brag about. And again, this was pre-social media. So, we'd send out postcards saying we got a placement on Party of Five, and our fan base would go, woo, and they would watch it. And then they'd co host the show and say, I heard you on that show. And that was it, so yeah, we couldn't make a giant international deal about it because there was no such thing as social media at the time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you had brought up the Rembrandts. Everybody knows that band name for one reason. And now I'm going to follow that up with a song again from 1993. I think we're stuck in certain years here. We're stuck 3 years apart. But here's a band that I'm going to say the name and everyone's going to be like, shut up. They play large venues. They're not indie. They're not alternative. However, coming from the standpoint of being embraced by radio, top 40 radio, this was one of the songs that I heard on 106.5 The End in North Carolina in between the hit bands. And the band is the Flaming Lips. And I am going off of 1993's Transmissions from the Satellite Heart and She Don't Use Jelly.
Nice.
It's a fun, weird, twisted song that would only come from him. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows this band. Of course, they've toured with Weezer. They've done big shows. We get it. The bubbles that are going around. I understand they're a big band. They've recorded with Miley Cyrus when they redid Sgt. Pepper. But radio airplay, mainstream, She Don't Use Jelly had its very brief moment in the sun. And then college radio truly embraced the Flaming Lips because I continued to hear them all throughout my college and then beyond, but mainstream radio did not. And that's where I feel they fittingly deserve a spot on this list.
Nice. Yep. Great call on that one. Great call on that one. And it's funny that, you'd say that, people say, oh, they're just too mainstream, that's they were a big act and they sold out big shows, but not everybody starts out that way. Right. I mean, especially, in this alternative world, you're just slogging it out and you're making your crazy music, to grab people's attention and stuff like that. And then suddenly it gets everybody's attention. And there's such a great example. That one was so left field. It was so left field that everybody started listening to it.
And now you have the fun of trying to follow that up because I know that is a left field song for you.
That's a great one. All right. I'm gonna skip up here into 1991 now. I promise that the years fly by a little faster after this. And I'm gonna go with this one before the other one. I'm gonna go with Teenage Fan Club, Metal Baby. So another act out of Scotland, I believe they were. But just this 4-piece band, 2 guitars, bass and drum, strumming big old chords, with their Marshall stacks turned up to 10 and singing these, beautiful pop songs with their stacks turned up to 10. And I just, when I heard, I was like, this is so cool. This is so beautiful and yet so loud and grungy. And I know that part of the reason they got their success is because it it sounded grungy, right? But it was very pop. The chord changes, the melodies, again, something the Beatles could have done only with Marshall Stax. And I loved it.
It's a fantastic song. And I'm sitting here scrolling through my list because I could lean into that grunge aspect of it, or I can lean into the pop part of it.
Right.
And
right.
I think coming out of that, I'm going to lean to the pop side of things. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because we've been staying in the early 90s. And because we're covering a whole decade, I want to give some love to the second half of the 90s here. So I'm going to go all the way up to 1996.
Nice.
And I'm going to go with one of my favorite power pop songs of all time by a band that I feel is one of the most criminally underrated bands of the 90s. And the fact that they're not a household name to me is actually shocking. And the album is Regretfully Yours. And I'm going to go with Super Drag and Sucked Out.
Nice.
His voice, it's such a beautiful, airy pop song. But when he gets to the Who Sucked Out the Feeling, and he's kind of letting it almost that visceral growl at the end of the notes, it adds this complexity to the song that takes what would normally feel like the theme from That Thing You Do, something written by Adam Schlesinger, very breezy power pop, and it adds this extra layer to it. And there's something about this song that always stuck out to me. To this day, every time I hear it, it immediately puts a smile on my face. So I am going to follow up Teenage Fan Club with Super Drag and Sucked Out.
Nice. Good one. Good one. All right. Well, if you're going to take a jump into the later 90s, then I'll jump up there too. And before I jump back,
take a dip in the water.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I'm going to go up to 1997. So this is a band. All you really alternative aficionados will appreciate the fact that this is a band that you probably have never heard of. They were from Los Angeles. They were right there alongside us, as in the clubs, and they had landed a deal, I believe, on Geffen Records, and Phil Ramone, I believe, produced this album. The song's called Flying Solo by the Tories. And again, I'm just a power pop guy, and they were just a power pop band, and they were so good. 2 guitars, bass, and drums. They were a 4-piece, and the best thing about it was that all of them could sing, and they could just sing their ass off, and they had the most incredible harmonies. And we'd play shows together, and we would just stand there in awe at the execution of their songs. Their songs just all sounded brilliant from stage, and they hit all of those notes. And we're like, God, how did they do that? And then we'd go up there and just, flounder and scream and work the audience into a frenzy. But we doesn't mean we were good. So, Flying Solo by the Tories, just another amazing, cool power pop song.
And again, they had some experiences with television because the show Jessie with Christina Applegate.
Exactly. And like I said, we hung out with them all the time. And so, by that time, Friends had taken off, and they were like, God, this better do for us what it did for the Rembrandts. Like, do you know how much money this could mean? But yeah, barely one season, and that was that.
Yeah. Well, you followed them on stage, so I am going to end the side, and I promise you, this is not me brown nosing, but I am going to close out side A with my favorite song from your 1998 self-titled CD, Too High for the Supermarket.
Awesome.
This to me is everything that I love about The Uninvited. It is fun, memorable, and there's a little bit of a quirkiness to it that works really well. It's funky, it's indie, and I have to ask, is this a true story?
As a matter of fact, it's 100% true story. I was going over to my brother's house to watch a college football game, USC versus UCLA, and I was supposed to pick up snacks on the way to his place, and so Yes, I partook before I went to the grocery store, and the thing was, I literally I was going to go in there and buy like $30 and chips and salsa and stuff like that. $170 later, I'm walking out with everything imaginable. I'm coming with these like 5 grocery bags of crap. And I'm like, bro, I'm too high for the supermarket. And it just sort of wrote itself after that. And, one of the things that we do, it's such a true story that when we would have these episodes, like various members of the band would have episodes in the supermarket. And so we would come in with a new verse. And so when we play the song live, we have like a library of 15 verses to choose from. And we'll just throw out random verses, about experiences with snack pack pudding or Jimmy Dean's pure pork sausage or what happens in the feminine hygiene aisle. And, it just goes on.
This is a song, the first time I saw the movie Half Baked with Dave Chappelle, Jim Brewer, how did this song not get in this movie? Because there's the scene where he walks out, where Kenny walks out with all the snacks and he feeds them to the horse. And every time I hear the song, I feel like there was this synergy between the two. But I absolutely love the song to the point where if my wife and I are in the food store, sometimes I'll just turn to him and be like, stay focused, man, tuna and bread.
Oh, that's awesome.
So with that, we close out side A of our 90s indie alternative mixtape, kicking things off with the La's There She Goes, Dada's Disneyland, the Posies' Golden Blunders, the Breeders' Cannonball, the Rembrandts' Just the Way It Is, Baby, the Flaming Lips' She Don't Use Jelly, Teenage Fan Club, Metal Baby, Super Drag, Sucked Out, the Tories, Flying Solo, and my guest for the evening, the Uninvited, Too High for the Supermarket. Remember, you can head over to myweeklymixtape.com to hear all the songs we're discussing in this mix through the embedded playlist. Now, I want to go back to the 90s as we're talking about the 90s right now and talk a little bit about the Uninvited here, because back in the early 90s, where a lot of side A was, the band won MTV's Beach House Band Contest during a time where there was no internet, and people were discovering bands either on the radio, at concerts, via word of mouth, or MTV when MTV was MTV. It wasn't
right.
television shows. They actually played music videos.
Right.
So here you are. You win this contest on a major network. MTV, this is probably their golden years. The 80s through the early 2000s with TRL is when everybody knew MTV. How much did this truly help catapult the band? And was this that defining moment for you guys?
Well, I'll tell you, we sure tried to make it our defining moment. It was huge at the time. We thought that this was it. This was it. And it's funny because when they announced it on MTV, it was almost like an aside. They were just these two VJs were, I think, at the beach house, and they were reading off who the winner was, and it was like, the Uninvited. And then they cut to commercial break. And I mean, that's it. That was it. But, we tried to milk it for all it was worth. We got $10,000 that we could use to buy musical equipment with. And this is, what is that, 93, 94, something?
Yeah.
And, so in adjusted dollars. So we go out to buy our musical equipment, and there's a single stipulation is that, okay, since there's 5 guys in the band, you each get to spend $2,000, but you can only buy one item. So it wasn't like we got to go on a shopping spree. It was like, pick out one thing. And so we each, just tried to find that most expensive thing that we wanted. And then, we did a new round of, demos and inquiries to all the record labels, and we put that up at the very top of the list. We got this, we won this contest. We're getting, exposure on MTV. Big goose egg. Just did not lead to anything. Did not lead to anything.
Wow.
A couple of years later, like 5 or 6 years later, we played for the MTV Music Video Awards. That was 99. And Interestingly, that was a wholly separate thing. I mean, they had since forgotten about us, and a whole new people in the executive suite, right? So, we managed to get that, but it was completely unrelated. So yeah, I mean, we milked it to death, but it did not move the meter. Yeah.
And at that time, that's actually shocking because you would think MTV, all it would take was simply a mumble of the band's name and everybody would have been salivating to get to the store and buy it because that's how influential MTV was at that time.
Yeah. And the thing was, one of the main reasons that it didn't pan out to be anything was that the song that won the contest was this song called Successful Vegetarian. And very much like the Flaming Lips, just a weird kind of song, but straight up bluegrass. It was a bluegrass song. My brother on banjo, acoustic guitar, played with the stand-up bass, harmonica, and it's just straight. I mean, it is bluegrass music, and that was part of the blessing and the curse of the Uninvited to this day is, what are you guys doing? What is this? That was, it was a super popular song for us. The fans loved it. And we put it out on the 7-inch single and, but it's bluegrass. And, you put that against Too High for the Supermarket, same kind of funny content in terms, but Too High is like kind of a funky pop guitar driven song. And then, the song was a kind of a breakout for us on our Atlantic record. What God Said is straight up ska punk. It is ska punk. And that's what it is. And that's the difference. If Successful Vegetarian was What God Said, if it was like a ska punk song at the time, yeah, we probably would have gotten signed at that moment. But, the record label was like, that's a bluegrass song. Waha. Yeah.
And What God Said was the other song that I had in my list that I was debating between the two, but I felt like where side one was heading, Too High for the Supermarket just fit that vibe a little bit better, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
But now fast forwarding to current times. The Uninvited has been super busy. Your latest album, Broken Promiseland, was released through the band's website in December of 2022. And there's something that I personally find extremely interesting about this album. You can buy it on the band's website, which is theuninvited.band, but you can't buy the MP3s on iTunes or stream it on Spotify or Apple Music or any of the other providers. Is there a reason for that?
There is a reason for that. Overall, I mean, the reason is we are experimenting. This is our first album in 20 years or whatever, and it's a new digital age. And so we're just trying to find the best way to market ourselves and make a buck at it. So we decided that we were not going to just put the album out to the streaming services en masse, like here's all 10 tracks, here's the album, go out and stream it. You stream the whole album and we make a penny and a half. Unless we're on Apple, then maybe it's 2 pennies, something like that. Mm-hmm. If you buy the album for $10, we net $8. So that's huge. You go out and sell 10,000 copies like that. Well, that's huge. So we're doing it kind of the old school way of like, we'll release singles on the DSPs, on all the streaming services. And if you're interested in getting the album, you can go buy it. And you can buy it for streaming. You can buy it for as a CD. And we're thinking that maybe our next album is going to be vinyl exclusively. You can stream some singles, on Spotify. And if you want the album, you can go buy the vinyl album. You can put the needle down on that baby. Streaming is a humongous ripoff. It's money-wise. It's just, there's no money in it. You go out and get yourself 1 million streams on Spotify. That sounds like a lot. Sure does. That's $3,000. Yay, $3,000. How much did it take you to get that? Streaming is purely, exposure. You have to look at streaming now as a way to parlay album sales and concert revenue or merchandise. Yeah.
I find that fascinating because as somebody who owns 4,500 CDs, I also have a Spotify account, but I use it for one reason and one reason only, which was something I did not have in the 80s and 90s when I started my CD collection, was the ability to listen to something before I purchased the physical copy. So if there's an album that comes out, I can listen to it all the way through. And if it's an album I just don't jive with, I don't have to buy it, and I could save some money to put towards, I don't know, my kids' college funds at some point. I'm going to have to worry about. But even though it was just a penny and a half, at least the band got something for their work from me, because they might not be a band that I jive with, which is totally fine, but I still supported them in some way.
Yeah.
Now, for the bands I do like, I go out and try to find a way to support it via physical. So if you do press the next album on vinyl, please do a CD as well. Thank you. Just throwing that out as a PSA.
Absolutely.
Just for me.
I'm sure
just one copy. It's fine.
I'm sure we will. Yeah. You can do CD on demand now, which is crazy, and it's, affordable. And so, yeah, that's what we do. Everything's on demand.
Yeah, definitely.
But you know what? Like I said, it's an experiment, and we're figuring it out. And I may come back on here next year and say, that idea didn't work. Here's the new one. Yeah.
But by experimenting, you're finding out and learning along the way. And I do the same thing with this podcast. So I do want to talk about some of your singles. And because you are the band on the show, I have permission to play some of these clips.
Anyone you want.
All right. The first one I'm going to start with is a song called I'm Not Dead Yet.
I'm not dead yet. I'm not dead yet. I'm not dead yet. I'm not dead yet. I rise up in the morning like a phoenix from the flame. You may come at me with bullets, man, but I got all the game. So let me tell you a little story about a man named Jed. Jed ain't dead. I'm not dead yet. I'm not dead yet.
All right, JT, there are two versions of this song. The version I just played, which is available on Spotify and all the other streaming services, as well as a version on the website that's listed as the remix. And I listened to it there, a little bit of different lyrics. What's the story between the two versions of the song and releasing a new version to streaming services?
Absolutely. So actually the one that's called The Remix is a remix from the album version. The version on the album, it's got some colorful language. So we decided to take out the colorful language, and then we just wanted to remix it to be bigger, louder, and more in your face. And that's basically what we did. So we hooked up with this guy, Gordon Saran, who mixes all of Nickelback stuff, by the way. And we're like, make this rock. And so, yeah, he just basically applied the rock to the mix, and we redid the lyric, and yeah, and that's it. That's what you got on Spotify.
And you just heard a clip there. It's an awesome song. I purchased it through Qboz.
Oh, nice.
Which is a hi-fi digital service, because I hope essentially the band gets more from that cut. However, I'm not an MP3 person. I like my lossless, and they do sell lossless. So
nice.
That is me being the music nerd there.
Yeah. Oh, well, you gotta.
And the next track I'm going to do is another one I bought from that Qboz site, and it's a single you put out called Unwritten.
Yes.
Now, this track has a real, I want to call it Americana vibe to it, while still keeping that signature sound intact. And I'd love to know, when you play a song like I'm Not Dead Yet, and then you play a song like Unwritten, you're getting the same story like we talked about earlier with What God Said and Too High for the Supermarket. There's a lot of different vibes that happen in the Uninvited. Is that something that the band actively seeks to accomplish during writing and recording? Or am I really overthinking this from the outside looking in?
No, you're not overthinking it, because it's something that needs to be thought about. So this is a thing. This is an issue, if you want to call it that, that has plagued us, I'll just say, from the very beginning. My brother and I are the primary songwriters, and our focus has always been on songwriting. We're not, stellar, amazing guitar players. We don't have the best voices in the world. The thing that we really focus on is songwriting. And we came from an Americana background, a bluegrass background. The first thing we did was a bluegrass band. My brother was 14, I was 12. He played banjo, I played mandolin, and it was, we did bluegrass bands. Weird. So that's that element is in our DNA. But mostly what we end up doing is we write all these songs, and especially in the early years, Steve and I were very, very, we co-wrote a lot, and we were very 100% honest with each other. And we come to each other, say, I got this idea. Your idea sucks. Okay, I'll go on to the next idea. How about this bridge? Bridge is good, but the chorus sucks. Let's do something else. And then we get to the point where when we were writing songs on our own, it was like, I came up with a song. What do you think of the song, bro? Well, that song sucks. You got another one? Yeah, I got this one. And so the pattern that emerged from all this was, is it a great song? Is that a great song? If it's a great song, let's work it up. And then we would work it up. I'm like, wow, that's kind of a great song. And then we would play it. And we'd play it. And the ultimate arbiter would be the audience. And if the audience really loved it, we're like, it's a keeper. And so stylistically, we might be all over the map. And we were, and we still are. And that is not helpful in a marketing point of view. And this happened to us. I mean, this happened to us all the time. I mean, Atlantic even came down and said, to our manager, hey, look. and this was a defining moment. The label came down and said, look, we know how to market widgets. So what's the widget here with the Uninvited? All right. Are they a party rock band? Okay. Because if they're a party rock band, we know how to market a party rock band. Or are they a serious band? Because if they're a serious band, we know how to market serious bands. But what we don't know how to do, we don't know how to market a band that is both a party rock band and a serious band on the same album. A band that has two lead singers. We don't know how to do this. A band that has a banjo in one track and then a farfisa in the other. Yeah, we don't know how to do that. So if you could just get them to be one thing, we'll give you another single and we'll move on with that. And, and our manager came to us with that. And we're like, yeah, we're this weird thing. We couldn't make the decision not to, choose one. And it is that decision, that choice, that thing that haunts us to this day in terms of, I'm out here trying to market our music on Spotify, trying to use Facebook ads to get Spotify plays on whatever playlist, blah, 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 blah. And it's still like right here in my face. What are you guys? What are you? And my brother and I have this conversation to this day. Hey, bro, should we just say that we're an alt Americana band and lean that direction and take songs that are outliers and cast them aside? And say, look, no, we understand that song's an outlier. We're not going to do it. We are an alt Americana band. Are we going to do that? Should we do that? After 50 freaking years, should we do that? And we haven't made a decision yet. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I love seeing is I'm not a massive TikTok person. I do have my TikTok channel. Your channel is one of the main reasons I enjoy going on the app. I love hearing the stories about what you've done through your band, your experiences, some of the stories you've told. One of the ones, if you don't mind me poaching one of your pieces of content from the channel, you had a band open for the Uninvited that went on to do some pretty interesting things.
Yeah. I mean, we did, we played a lot of shows. We did a lot of touring, especially in the pre-Atlantic years, and especially around the Western US, since we were based in Los Angeles, and, we played San Diego, Las Vegas, Salt Lake City, blah, blah, blah. Big Western US tour circuit. And so, we had a lot of bands we played with and a lot of bands that opened up for us. And I think one of the great examples is we used to play this place called Doc's Lab, Doc Ricketts in Monterey. And Monterey is sort of our adopted hometown because we became very popular in Monterey. And we became so popular at Doc Ricketts that, whenever we played, there was a line outside, line around the block, that whole thing. And so other bands wanted to play with us. And this one band wanted to play with us really bad. And so the owner eventually of the club was like, well, you got to talk to the band. You got to talk to JT or Steve, and, they'll let you know if you can open for them. Because we don't need an opener. They're going to pack the place no matter what. So the guy gives me a call. He's like, I'm in this band. We're called Train, and we're big here in San Francisco, and we want to open for you. I'm like, all right, come open for us. So they come and open, and I didn't hear much of the set. I only heard that they closed with a cover of Zeppelin's Kashmir, and everyone seemed to like their cover of Kashmir. But after the show, an inordinate amount of people came up to us like, God, that opening band sucked, man. What was up with that? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Wow, we were just, trying to give these guys a try, sorry. And so the guy calls again. He's like, dude, that was so cool. Let's do that again. I'm like, hey, man, I'm sorry, but no, crowd thought you sucked. And so we can't do that. We can't do anything that's going to jeopardize our crowd. So no, you can't open for us anymore. And but they ended up being Train, so they went on to a level of success that is quite excessive. Quite a bit more than we ever obtained. So and there's a small handful of very similar stories of bands that opened for us that went on to much greater levels of fame than we did.
I guess you're not picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, Train."
No.
Remember us?
Remember us? Yeah. That's a hard one. Yeah.
Well, for the independent music fans out there, I highly suggest you follow the Uninvited on TikTok. JT's content is absolutely amazing. I feel like you're kind of working through with your experience of being on a major label and kind of breaking down the walls for musicians that might not know about that. And I think that's important for musicians to hear, because there's these people have views of what they expect the industry to be. And you've lived it and experienced it, and you're still doing the indie thing. So having the insight of major and indie, I just find the channel absolutely fascinating. And I'd love to know, are you getting from the band level something out of it where you feel like it's turning to more listens? Or is it turning to more engagement? And are other artists reaching out to you? Because I feel like the stories you're telling are important for indie musicians that are trying to start out now. I feel like this is stuff they need to just know.
It's interesting you would put it that way, because the biggest benefit of our TikTok channel at this point is that, it's group therapy for musicians. We went in going, all right, here's this new social media platform that we have to be part of, and let's just, okay, here we go. And we did our band thing, right? And we had put out little clips of us playing live shows and getting ready to go on tour and recording in the studio and, that kind of stuff. And it just fell on deaf ears. No one gave a crap about it at all. And so it was only when, we started getting in front of the mic and saying, all right, here's our experience, this is what we've been through, that it started getting any traction. And, it becomes sort of its own little macrocosm, because now you stop reaching music fans as much as you're reaching musicians. But you know what? I think it's great because if, it's become this place where, I'm able to talk about, my experience in the business and my perspective on things, and other musicians come in and say, oh my God, I feel the same way. I'm going through the same thing. What did you do about this? What did you do about that? Or they can come in and say, wow, man, you are so full of BS. I can't even believe you're on this platform, but then we can engage in some good dialogue, because the more things change, the more they stay the same, and oh man, you were on a label, back in the Jurassic period, you don't know anything. It's like, oh no, man, no, the motivation is still the same. This is about optimizing shareholder value. They don't give a flying, what about anything else. Yeah. And so, it's become something different than I thought it would be. And, going back to your question of, has it helped the band a little? There's a couple of truisms here. One, it has helped a little, right? I can see that people click on our link, that's in our bio, and, and people go and listen to the music. Not a ton of people, maybe it's a 2% conversion rate there. Some people have come to our shows. I saw you on TikTok. Oh my God, how about that? So, that's cool. But it's also part of the self-fulfilling prophecy of the whole thing. We've had a couple of successful videos, been doing this for a while now, where you got like up to like 10,000 followers, and promoters want to hear that. Promoters want to hear how many followers do you have on TikTok? Well, I got 10,000 followers. Oh, okay. I'll answer your email then, and they don't know that 9,700 of them don't interact with the with the account at all. They just want to hear the number. And so you can tell them the number, and suddenly you have legitimacy. But I think that applies to any social media platform. Say, I got 10,000 Facebook followers. Oh, you are legit. I got 100,000 Instagram followers. Oh, you are legit.
And the problem is, you can spend, and I have the same problem with the podcast, more time being a social media person than you can investing that time into your songs, or, for in my instance, into reaching out to get guests on the show, booking and producing the show. There's a lot of work that goes into podcasting. I wish I could say that you and I just turn these mics on, we talk, and I just hit stop and upload it, and I walk away and I'm all done, and thousands of people are going to be running to listen. That's the goal. But there's a lot of work that goes into podcasting, just like music. And you could conceivably spend more time engaging social media just to have, because for me, podcasting is a discussion. So the social media is where the discussion continues after an episode goes out. And I'm blessed to have a lot of the mixtapers who engage with me on social media. So it does become a double-edged sword, though, because you could stop investing into the actual art that you're trying to create. And I'm not trying to say the show is art, but it is a form of, it's an output. It's a creative output.
Yes.
So trying to strike a balance is very complicated. So I completely see where you're coming from. And I think that's why I resonate with the content so much. We are going to continue talking about the Uninvited in a little bit, but we did promise people a side B to this indie alternative playlist. So let's get back to it. And I get to kick things off this time. And I'm going to go to 1996 and ask the question, so just how far down do you want to go? And we could talk it out over a cup of joe. I am going with the Refreshments Banditos from 1996's Fizzy Fuzzy Big and Buzzy. Another band that just, I don't get. That album to me is a snapshot of 1996 musically. They checked off every box that to me would put them in the same, and if not, maybe even bigger than a Matchbox 20 at the time. They had the sound, the look, everything, the catchiness, the hooks. And Banditos is the one song that did get a little bit of play, but I feel like this band just didn't get their just due. And I want them to have it tonight.
Nice.
So I'm kicking it off with Banditos from the Refreshments.
Such a great choice. Love that album. Love that band. We opened for them one time in Tucson, Arizona. And Yeah, with Dead Hot Workshop, which was sort of a rising band from that scene too. But I think, you know, you had the Gin Blossoms were like the big band of what the Refreshments were doing.
Yeah.
And got, you know, and again, talk about another band that gave us hope of like, oh yeah, you know, we kind of do songs like that. We could do songs like that. And yeah, a great song, great band. All right. So let's do one that's going to challenge the notion of what is alternative. Okay. I'm going to go to 1995, right in the middle of the 90s, with a song off of Wilco's, what I would say, breakthrough album. And the song is Out of Mind, Out of Sight. And the thing with Wilco is you can follow their musical DNA all the way back to, you know, what people considered one of the original alternative bands, which was Uncle Tupelo, right? And they started the whole no depression kind of movement, this new Americana movement, which I was totally into, being, you know, coming from a bluegrass history myself, loved Uncle Tupelo. And then when they split off, you know, the two guys went their separate directions, and one started Sun Volt, the other started Wilco. And, you know, Wilco was kind of present through the 90s, but to me in 1995, you know, this song, especially Out of Mind, Out of Sight, was like their calling card style. And so you ask yourself, okay, you know, is this alternative? Is that really alternative music, you know, or is that just more, you know, kind of alt Americana? But if you look at the fact that what was pop at the time was Boys to Men and Madonna and TLC. Yeah, hell yeah, it was alternative. You know, that's exactly what alternative was. And it was just great. You know, to me, it just, you know, it still had those roots elements to it. And yet, you know, just giant blazing guitars. Love that song.
That is damn near impossible to come out of scrolling through my list, because Wilco has a sound of itself. So there's going to be a pivot here musically. And the one thing I will tie into Wilco is the year 1995. That's about all I've got. I love Wilco, but nothing on my list truly comes out of that naturally. So this is going to be a little bit of a left turn, but an album that I feel is, again, in that indie quirky vibe that fits where we're going here. And when you have a band that has an instrument called a bass guitar and a git bass, which are regular 6-string guitars modified, you get the Presidents of the United States of America. And no, I am not going with Lump. Weird Al covered it. I understand that. That song becomes its own stratosphere. And I am not going with Peaches, the one that everybody thinks I was going to go with. I'm going with the song that kicks the album off, Kitty.
Nice.
Kitty at my foot, and I want to touch it. The whole part where the kitty's going to spend the night outside and the scratching, and just it was so quirky. And I think maybe the storytelling aspect of the song is the only way I could even draw a line to Wilco, because musically they're two different entities. But Presidents was something where I don't understand how this band didn't get bigger, other than the moment in The Wedding Singer when they did their cover of Video Killed the Radio Star. They're still putting out music, and it's still great music. I just don't feel like I've seen the Presidents play with jam bands like Mo. So they're another band where they're able to kind of hop from bill to bill, and people respect them no matter what bill they're on. And that's an interesting aspect. So tying it into Wilco, I feel like that's kind of my linchpin to connect those two.
That's great. And what year did that album come out?
That was 1995.
1995. Okay. So in 1994, right before that album came out, they were the buzz band at South by Southwest. And we got to see them in concert at this club, and they just tore it up. And I mean, everything that you think that their live show would be, you know, listening to that music, it was, and it was amazing. And there was one moment where the lead bass player, I guess,
whatever you want to call it, right,
is jumping so frantically that he smashes his head on the top of the stage, and he's literally bleeding out the skull, and he just keeps going. And it was such a rock moment, and they were so good and so tight and so different. Yeah. And they were all the buzz the next day. That was such a great album. And like you say, yeah, just where'd that come from? So unique, so cool. All right. Well, now you're making it really hard to follow up. So I'm going to, we're just upping the ante here every time. All right. Then I'm going to go with something else that was kind of artsy and quirky at the time that became incredibly inspirational for me. 1997, Ben Folds 5. And the song that I'm going to go with is The Battle of Who Could Care Less.
Wow. Good one.
Thank you. So, Ben Folds 5 became kind of a household-ish name. They became a mainstream name, still make music to this day. Ben Folds is an absolute genius himself. I believe he is now the creative director of the Philadelphia Philharmonic. I might get that wrong, but he became the creative director of a big national orchestra recently. When that album came out in 97, they'd done a couple albums before, I believe. I think that was the first single, The Battle of Who Could Care Less, before Brick came out. And Brick, of course, was a #1 hit and propelled them off into the stratosphere, and from which they quickly came down. I mean, it was a fluke alternative hit, Brick was.
And I also don't think that song is indicative of who Ben Folds is.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. But The Battle of Who Could Care Less, especially coming out then in 1997, to me just sort of encapsulated that alternative rock was getting commercial, because it's this total indictment of the scene, of who can have the most antipathy in the room, right? Who can care less. And it's so clever and it's so different. Again, it's guitar, it's piano, bass, and drums, and the bass player's got a fuzz box forever, so he's rocking it. And it's jazz, it's pop, it's I don't know what, it's uniquely them. And when I heard that record, I got my hands on everything Ben Folds that I possibly could, and then listened to every album he put out since. Ben Folds became an influence, a major influence on, especially on finding my voice in songwriting, because his voice is so distinct. And it's such narrative songwriting, and there is not a single cliche or even anything even close to a cliche in any of his songs. And it's incredible. And so I'm going with that one.
And what's funny is I recently finally picked up a copy of Rockin' the Suburbs on CD. And when you go back and you listen to that, you're like, man, this is something else. He really has a way with words, a way with delivery. And the way I'm going to tie into Ben Folds is with another artist. I mentioned his name earlier, but it's a band that had a massive hit song. It was a pop smash. Cover bands cover it to this day. And that hit song is Stacy's Mom.
Nice.
But when you're talking about Fountains of Wayne, there's a era of this band prior to Stacy's Mom. And when I first saw the band, they were this small group getting their big exposure, opening up for Smashing Pumpkins on the Melancholy and Infinite Sadness tour. And I did not know a single thing about them. We went to the show and they come up on stage and they open up with this song that blows my mind. And to this day, it is such a perfect snapshot of 90s power pop that I feel like it fits in this mix. And that song is Radiation Vibe.
Oh, yeah.
The first song off their self-titled album. Adam Schlesinger, when he passed, it broke my heart. The guy had such a way with melody. He had a power pop band called Tinted Windows with James Iha from the Smashing Pumpkins, with Taylor Hanson, and with, drummer of Cheap Trick. Oh, my God.
Bunny Carlos?
Bunny Carlos. I am so sorry. My brain just... And this album came out in the late 2000s, and it is such a perfect snapshot of power pop. And when Adam passed, it broke my heart because, I mean, he wrote the theme song to one of my favorite movies, which was That Thing You Do. The guy just had a way with music. And this song, to me, I just wanted to spotlight it because it's not the Stacy's Mom. It's not the That Thing You Do. it's Radiation Vibe, and it's a song that is so underrated, and it fits so well musically with what we've put together so far. So that is my track 5.
Awesome. Great choice. All right, underrated then. Let's go with underrated. That's got to be the linchpin here. All right, well, underrated in my opinion. I'm gonna go with G Love and Special Sauce also from 1997, I-76.
I-76. All right.
Yes. So to me, I heard about G Love's first album on KROQ, and Richard Blade, the DJ, he's like, okay, here are the bands in town this month or this week. Glove and Spatial Sauce. And I'm like, what band would be called Glove and Spatial Sauce? And I finally figured out it was G Love and Special Sauce. And I got the album just on that, and had been listening, I think that the album was called Yeah, It's That Easy. That's right. So Yeah, It's That Easy was maybe the third album or something like that. And to me, G Love was in peak form. So as a white boy rapper, he had his flow down. As a blues guitarist, he was authoritative. His other albums, the previous albums, he was so far in the back pocket, he was like in another pair of pants. But, his playing was authoritative, and his songwriting was like on point now. And so it was, to me, that was like one of the best G Love and Special Sauce albums. And I-76 just has this great vibe, of a bunch of guys just talking about what's the best way to get to the arena to go watch the game. Like what route should you take? And it's awesome. And so I've been a huge G Love fan. And to me, that's the one. That's the one right there.
I love it. I had Cold Beverage from their 1994 self-titled. I couldn't see a universe without G Love making this list. I have had G Love on my prior podcast, Playlist Wars. Been a fan for a long time, but that's a tough one to come out of, looking at on my list. Side B is a little mixed up and all over the place, but in a good way.
But wasn't the 90s mixed up and all over the place? I mean, that was the beauty of it.
100%. And I think the song I'm going to pick fits in that mode just so well. Because G Love was kind of this outlier, like you said. It's mixing hip hop, it's mixing blues, it's mixing acoustic, it's mixing a little bit of everything. And in 1995, on the album I Am an Electric Firecracker, a band called Tripping Daisy did a little bit of everything. Yes. And they had this song that was so 90s. To me, it defines the decade. It just vibe and sound. I'm going with I Got a Girl.
Nice.
This was another one of those songs that I heard endlessly on 106.5 The End down in North Carolina. And sometimes if the damn DJ didn't talk up at the end of the song, you didn't know what the hell it was. And you had to start asking around, who does the song I Got a Girl? Who does the song I Got? And finally you find it. And it's always you knew the album cover, because when you see the album cover, you're like, that's a 90s album. And sure enough, but everything about it worked, and everything about that band is so cool. I'm surprised that I Got a Girl was the only one that captured people's attention, at least at the mainstream level, because such a talented band outside of it. Lest we forget, members of Trippin' Daisy went on to form the Polyphonic Spree, which is still growing strong now. And then there's the fact that some mixtapers chimed in with their songs. So I know they're on people's minds when it comes to this topic.
Yeah, that's a great choice. And to me, there's a direct line between that and Flaming Lips, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's that same kind of quirkiness and Okay, then I'm going to take a step back and go back to 1993 to a band I loved that was, again, to me, one of those 90s alt-rock power trios that was really underrated, really overlooked, but really, I think, helped define the genre, and that's Buffalo Tom.
All right.
And I'm going to go with Soda Jerk
Nice.
from their 1993 album. I think the album was Big Red Letter Day, and I want to say they were from Boston. Shoot, was it Boston or Detroit? Anyway, to me, they have, even if they're from the Midwest, they have this kind of East Coast sound to them. And I should probably just look this up and solve it once and for all. But it was just, again, there was just the three of them, guitar, bass, and drums. And when you're doing the power trio thing, your songs better be freaking great, because you're not covering anything up with, lead guitars and keyboard padding and, lush textures and stuff. You're belting out a great song. And to me, that was, boy, loved that song, loved that album, and very alternative.
Very, very alternative. And one of those bands that, again, you had mentioned Juliana Hatfield before. They were all kind of in that, I guess, lumping by stations, because you would always hear those songs kind of in a series or in a block, so to speak, because you wouldn't be tying them up with a band like Sponge or somebody else from that
which
era.
is on the list. Yeah,
I have them on the list too. And oh God, damn, this is tough, because I am looking through my list and I've still got 15 songs and I've only got one choice left.
Oh, all right. We down to our last choice?
We're down to our last choice each.
All right.
And this is really tough, but all I'm going to say is there's an easy volume 2 to this list here, because I have so many leftover songs that we're not even scratching the surface. But being a bass player, I'm going to go with one of my favorite bass lines of all time. This bass line, the first time I heard it, I literally told my buddy next to me, shh, and I turned the radio up because I had to just absorb what was happening. And this song blew my mind in 1996, and here we are in 2023, and the song still blows my mind, only now it's when I'm in the movie theater watching the trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and it's playing in the background, because this is a band that never got past In the Meantime, and it's Space Hog from 1996's Resident Alien.
Nice.
Massive arena rock. I don't know what you'd call this song. The bass line is funky. You've got it over this halftime groove, but then his voice comes in and it's got this beautiful falsetto over these soaring guitars. You don't know if the chorus, if they're trying to be Bush, if they're trying to be that alternative hard rock, or if they're trying to go with this funky mix. And it stuck out to me, and it was so fresh and so original. And the label, I don't think, knew what to do with them, because this was it that I heard on radio from them, and it's an absolute crime.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Space Hog In the Meantime.
Nice.
And I'll tell you, where Guardians of the Galaxy in the first movie touched on everybody's 70s nostalgia, when I saw that trailer and they played this, I'm like, oh, they're going after my age group now. Damn it. And it's working. I have to see this movie now, no matter what.
Yeah. Great choice on that. I'd absolutely considered that one for the list. So I'm glad you covered that. And it's interesting, because we could probably have a whole other podcast about how the record industry was changing in the 90s, and it was changing dramatically in the 90s with the advent of Napster and the internet starting to take off, and this whole idea of digital music and digital downloads and that sort of thing. And I think it was really accelerating, and an idea as old as time, but that was accelerating further and further. And that was, sort of lack of artist development.
Yeah.
It was, there was a lot of just like, all right, let's see, let's sign some bands and see what works. And, there were so many major labels at the time, and, they were each releasing 4 new bands every 3 weeks. And, so it was just a lot of running up the flagpole and see who salutes. And the part that I could never figure out is like, that was a great song, but why didn't you give them a follow-up? You're telling me the follow-up wasn't as good, or, you were too busy going on to the next thing because that was the schedule. The schedule was 4 new bands every 3 weeks. Oh, and you also have all of your veteran bands too, so it was just, you can't, you can't keep up that schedule. Anyway, like I said, whole other podcast. So let me just get to my last song then.
Yeah. You get to close out the whole night tonight.
All right. Well, then I'm going to close out kind of the way that we were going in, talking about what is indie alternative rock. So I'm going to go a little more obscure, and I'm going to go with Mockingbirds by Grant Lee Buffalo, 1994. Such a beautiful song, beautiful, ethereal song that, to me, again, was sort of like, this wasn't his first album. It wasn't their first album. There's this direct line into the Paisley Underground, that was happening. And, making sort of lilting, beautiful, ethereal music that was in direct contrast to the formulaic, pop that you were getting from Madonna and Michael Jackson and, and this kind of thing, that it truly was an alternative to what else you could listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, really underrated band, making really beautiful music. And to me, Mockingbirds was the sort of the one.
Love the pick. To me, Grant Lee Buffalo kind of fits in the same category as a band like the Sundays, if I throw them out there.
Yes, please do. Yes, exactly.
Their cover of Wild Horses, again, like Mockingbirds, it's this atmospheric song that really is not, it's hard to define because yes, the one I'm talking about is a Rolling Stones cover that everybody knows the original, but they were able to make it this heartfelt, tender ballad, beautiful, soaring.
Yeah.
And I think coming out of the big, heavy In the Meantime, kind of funneling it down from that thought process, except without the distortion, Mockingbirds is a perfect way to close this out. So there you have it, folks. Side B of our 90s indie alternative playlist, starting with The Refreshments, Bandidos, Wilco, Out of Mind, Out of Sight, Presidents of the United States of America, Kitty, Ben Folds 5, The Battle of Who Could Care Less, Fountains of Wayne, Radiation Vibe, G Love and Special Sauce, I-76, Trippin' Daisy, I Got a Girl, Buffalo Tom, Soda Jerk, Space Hog, In the Meantime, and Grant Lee Buffalo, Mockingbirds.
I'd listen to that. Wow.
Hell yeah. And you should by visiting the 90s indie alternative page at myweeklymixtape.com to hear all the songs we've discussed in this mix through the embedded playlist. Now, JT, before we close up shop for the night, getting back to the Uninvited. At the end of 2021, your brother Steven released a book through Hearn Publications called The Uninvited, On the Road with the Greatest Rock Band You've Never Heard. My most difficult question of the night, did you read the book?
Yes, I read the book, and my brother even gave me an advance copy and said, you have to approve of this because there's some revealing information in here. And I'm like, just print it, bro. It's all good.
Well, why don't you tell people a little bit about what you read and where they could snag a copy? Because I feel like when people understand the story, it just creates a bigger connection to the music, which is something that certainly happened for me.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, my brother is a fantastic writer, and he, finally decided to do a memoir of the band. And what's cool about the book is that it's more than a memoir. It's more than just a, okay, on this day we did this, and then on this day we did that. He really tries to weave a story of why he was doing this great adventure and what are you willing to sacrifice for your dream? And then what do you do when your dream changes? Then what happens when your dream changes? And it's a great book. I mean, all humility aside, it's a great book. And kudos to my brother. It actually hit #1 on Amazon's punk rock memoirs chart. He actually got over Dave Grohl's book.
Oh, wow.
Just for a week, but he did it. And so, yeah, I mean, you can still get it on Amazon. You can get it off our website at uninvited.com or theuninvited.band. And I recommend it.
I certainly do as well. It's a fantastic read. Now, a couple more questions for you, JT. Going back to your TikTok page, given all the stories that you tell on there, what advice would you give an indie band starting out now if you could go back and maybe give yourself the same advice when you guys were starting out in the 90s.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. Because I'd probably give two different bits of advice. At this point, I would tell a young band, be yourself. Just absolutely 100% be yourself. You know, look at your musical influences and let them influence you, but don't try to be them. Don't listen to anybody about what your music should be. Be you, and take the time to really look inside and say, okay, here's what makes me special. This is my voice. This is my perspective. This is what I do. This is how I think, how I feel. This is my perspective on things. And then be that. Don't try to be anything other than your really authentic self. Because, you know, in a world of competition where we're all competing for attention, authenticity is the only thing that's going to capture and maintain someone's attention. And the competition has never been more fierce than it is right now. So that's what I tell a young band then. If I went back and told myself, you know, had to tell myself a bit of advice, you know, it would lean a lot more towards believe in yourself, believe in your instincts. Trust your instincts. And I guess, you know what? I guess, honestly, I would tell myself as well that, you know, there's a business side to this, which I guess is something you should tell kids these days too. This is as much business as it is art. And, you know, not business in the respect of, yo, mind your money, because no, like, you are a business now. You better know your marketing. You got to understand artist development from a sales and marketing standpoint, because no one is going to help you there. Labels don't do that. Nobody does that. Nobody does development. So, you know, hone your business chops, because it is more business than it is music, which wasn't quite the case back then, but really is the case right now.
Well, speaking of that business, JT, what does the rest of 2023 have in store for the Uninvited? Is there any new music on the horizon, shows, touring?
Absolutely, all the above. So we're going to be releasing a couple of more singles from the new album this year before we go off and make another album. And we're doing a little bit more touring. We're going back up and down the West Coast again, and then we're keeping our fingers crossed on a couple of festivals that we're gonna are hopefully going to come through. So we're back at it. We're So, you know, if you come to the website, uninvited.com or theuninvited.band, you can get on our email list. You can see all about tours and shows. You can buy the album. You can find out where you stream The Uninvited, which is basically everywhere. We're The Uninvited, so you can stream us everywhere. We're the one that's not a Viking death metal band, basically. There's like 6 Viking death metal bands that decided to call themselves The Uninvited, and we couldn't get a cease and desist order to. So we're the ones that are not Viking death metal.
Well, you guys are eclectic, so maybe you should write a Viking death metal song.
Maybe we should. Yeah, exactly.
Well, JT, thank you so much for joining me on My Weekly Mixtape, and I hope to have you back on the show again sometime, because I feel like there's a lot more of this road we can go down.
Brian, it was an absolute joy. So thank you so much for having me on. Really enjoyed it.
Remember, mixtapers, you can find My Weekly Mixtape on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at My Weekly Mixtape. You can also head to myweeklymixtape.com to check out the full catalog of My Weekly Mixtape episodes. If you want to support the show, please consider becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/My Weekly Mixtape. That's all for this week. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, enjoy the tunes.